For some of you, this is probably your first time in hearing of RSM. So my name is Will Laird. I'm the partner in charge of the Toowoomba office for RSM. And RSM is a professional services firm providing accounting, tax and advisory services. We've been around helping farmers for a long time, as you can see in that picture. This is actually a picture way back when we used to, well, not me of course, but my colleagues way back in the day used to actually go out in a fleet of cars to visit farmers out in the rural space, and they were actually one of the first accounting firms to ever think of doing a concept like that. And we have offices throughout the country. We've highlighted ourselves, of course, because we're most important. So that's where we are. And RSM Toowoomba is obviously really proud to continue the tradition of working with farmers through that long history. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker. Bruce McConnel from the Feed Leaders Australia is the General Manager of FLA, bringing with him a wealth of experience in agricultural management. FLA is a sister entity of the TSBE, which for those who are just thinking I'm just talking lingo, that's the Toowoomba and Surround Basin Enterprises, and exists to support the growth of food and agricultural businesses to allow them to capitalise on new market opportunities, innovation and export. And we're really pleased to see the work that the FLA are doing, and great that, that Bruce has taken up a leadership role in that. So would you please welcome Bruce?
Good morning all. So I find these regional updates actually really easy to do because Toowoomba right now is, for those unaware, it is the fastest growing regional council area in Australia. It's growing at 1.6% population, it's growing at 6.2% GDP growth. It is effectively going gangbusters. And it is the diversity of that economy which is the envy of Australia. Obviously there's some big infrastructure projects and I'll go through them in more detail soon, but all of our sectors are growing heavily. And I was actually just in Townsville the last couple of days and seeing what our counterparts up and down the coast are like. It is chalk and cheese, what this region is doing as opposed to what the rest of our state is doing. So I'm sure Bob might lead to it, but Queensland has just slipped to fifth fastest growing state in Queensland. So, but we are absolutely bucking that trend. So TSBE, bit of an overview. We represent a whole range of different industry sectors. We have three divisions: a supply chain, a health, and a food and ag. Hence, Food Leaders Australia. Overall. Our members represent about $5 billion worth of turnover within this region and account for about 450,000 employees through our membership base. So our members account for a very large portion of the economy which we're talking about. But effectively our job is to connect, advocate and facilitate capability development of our members. We are a connection organisation. So our job is to work with our members and simply connect them into opportunities, whether that's driving competition to tenders to lower cost of any procurement they're doing or linking them into new markets. That's the place we play. Or, and most exciting for me, is actually linking them into new innovation. I won't go into the rest of that detail. There's two of us, Geraldine Damani, who some may know used to be Trade Investment Queensland Austrade. She does most of my overseas work and works with the members around their export development. She also runs a large program, a Shell QGC based Emerging Exporters program, which is a $450,000 program to take domestic trading businesses international. So she runs that for us. And then we've got the TSBE operations team, so another 12 staff sit behind us in journalists, marketing, finance, etc. And we do events. There's one coming up. It would be remiss of me not to do this one because this one's damn exciting. The Darling Downs Beef Battle, the first of its kind in Toowoomba. We're pitting every beef company against each other. We've got the Star Group Casino coming up from Sydney to actually cook the meat for us, and it's a taste testing competition against all of the meat companies. So it's all their Wagyu and long-fed Angus all night. So it'll be meat sweats. You have to get through about 600 gram of beef on the night to actually taste test them all, but it's going to be a fantastic night. So, what's happening around the region? Some quick stats around the region. We're now at $11.6 billion economy. We've got, interesting, around $11 billion worth of infrastructure happening in the region. So we are the largest infrastructure spend in in Queensland at the moment in terms of the projects that are committed to, and we are saying that the ARTC Inland Rail is committed to in doing that because it is very much progressing. As I said, the figures of Toowoomba are astounding, and that is getting the interest of governments, federal and state, who are trying to hitch their trailer to what's happening here. This has been a story of private-led investment to this stage. So obviously the Wagners, the Gardners with the Pulse Data Centre and many others are driving this investment boom that has then enabled government to come in on the back of that and connect it further. So, Toowoomba Premium Milk Plant, it's the one that everyone wanted to happen that hasn't happened, and everyone wants to know what's happening with it, so I'll give you the update. It's still chasing cash. It's as simple as that. So it was going to be funded by a sole consortium, and that didn't happen. So it is still very much a viable long-term project for Toowoomba to save the dairy industry. I still think it has a significant amount of legs, and they're talking through with investors at the moment, but that is a wait-and-see prognosis at the moment. So, as I said, it's still alive, but you may not see dirt being turned over on that any day soon. But the new one to town is the Botanica Juice factory. So that's a high-pressure juice factory. The exciting part about this is, like the Toowoomba Milk factory, it's that value-adding food injection. It's being based around the inland rail concept out at the hub. Also excitingly, it has a lot of latent capacity within its infrastructure. So if anyone else wants to tap into that cold pressing or high pressure pressing of vegetables or fruits, there is latent capacity in this facility to allow that industry to grow. So if you've got anyone looking at trying to value add to foods, this will be a place to link. There is talk of others moving now in around that facility that will also have latent capacity to grow into that. So that will be something we'll be looking at, is actually quantifying what they'll look like, what industries can use that technology, and jumping in on the back of that. If there's any questions or you want more details, please, small enough crowd, jump in and have a crack. Pulse Data Centre. Not many people realise that was a fully farmer-led initiative. That was about 75% of the investment in that came from farming families. So that is driving ag tech. I was actually in Townsville and they were telling me that they're going to build Australia's first regionally based data centre in May next year. Obviously they haven't heard of this one yet. That is state of the art. So that is Tier 3 accredited. To put it in perspective, there's only other 3 Tier 3 accredited facilities in Australia. So that means they're only allowed 1 minute of downtime per year. So it is a fantastic facility. It is world leading. It is on the national fibre backbone. So it has the same connectivity of any other data centre in Australia, with rack costs sitting around 50% of your capital city rivals. So if you're looking at data storage or you know anyone who is, this is a place that is wildly competitive. They've already got their first room effectively full with commitments, and are now building their second room in that, and there's 3 rooms in the building that's already built, with 3 more buildings being master planned around it. Okay, so that is a massive piece of enabling infrastructure within the Witmack Precinct. So the Witmack Precinct is by far the bigger, more exciting part of this. If you've ever heard the term a circular economy, where one input goes in and then it never leaves. So all the byproduct is used across the economy that exists within that precinct. Okay, so you bring in a seed of lettuce, the lettuce grows, the waste leaves go and feed an aquaculture facility. The waste that comes out of that goes back into the protected horticulture environment for the lettuce. They've got their own power plant out there. So Simmons are building a gas-fired power station with renewable energies that will give power to all the tenants of this site at around 50 to 60% cost of current power usage, because you don't have to pay any of the fixed line costs. You just pay for the power. So if you're looking at the best wholesale rate you can get at the moment is around 18 cents a kilowatt, they'll be able to put it into there at around 12 to 15 cents a kilowatt. So for your high power users, that's going to be a massive boon for them. Then their byproduct gets moved all around that economy that they're building within there. KPMG, Telstra, Simmons are already looking to move offices into that precinct, particularly around an ag tech precinct they're building there as well. One of the great ideas that we like that they're looking to build out there as well is called the Wicked Wall of Problems. So they're going to work with industry to actually quantify and do the due diligence on what are the problems industry's facing, then hold them there and get funds to come in with innovators to solve them. So actually have validated problems of industry that innovators will solve rather than innovators trying to make solutions. And we were talking about this earlier. Innovators trying to fix problems that may not exist. This is where you actually go to the problem bank to get them. So about 5 hectares of this development will be that agtech precinct, and ideally will become a global front. Put in perspective, they've already spent around $50–60 million out there in building this. It's going to be huge, and it now has federal and state government support. Wellcamp Airport, cargo freight flight, everyone wants to know what's happening with that. It's now full, it's operating fully. They are looking at taking that sometime in the first half of next year onto a second flight. But contrary to rumours, that is not an ag flight. Okay, so there is chilled beef going on that and some frozen beef that must hit markets due to knockouts in foreign markets, but that is mainly a resource odd product flight. Okay, so what ends up happening if your product is higher than 1.6 metres high and you want to get it out of anywhere north of Sydney, it has to come out of Toowoomba now. There is no cargo facility to do air freight anywhere north of Sydney that can take anything higher than 1.6 metres high except for that flight. Okay, so refitting of resource energy machines and everything go out on that. Racehorses go out on that. Artworks, the set of kinky boots and the set of stage shows when they come to Australia go out on that flight. Okay, that's the nature of it. Most people don't also realise that flight actually comes in from Hong Kong, goes Sydney, Melbourne, Toowoomba out. It's not just into and out of Toowoomba. People like Botanica, Toowoomba Premier Milk Plant, that's how we'll get high value perishable products onto that flight, and hence that's where we spend our investment attraction time, is trying to build out what happens there. That is a massive piece of infrastructure. In terms of the airport, with that, they're up to now more than 90 flights a week, passenger flights a week going out of that airport. It is one of the fastest growing airports in Australia, and the announcement of the Qantas Pilot Training Academy with 500 new people coming to town on the back of that, which will be operational by the 1st of July, is going to be a massive game changer for that airport and what that means for our region. Inland rail, the route is set within the corridor. So my understanding is the corridor is 200 metres wide, and it may snake within that corridor, but the corridor's set. Okay, so that's no longer a discussion point with that, unless the whole project stops. But if it goes ahead, that will be the route. Most of the activity around the inland rail is still happening at opportunities for yellow goods. So it's opportunities inside the corridor on the construction of that operation. There are staff members now in Toowoomba and along the route of this that are looking at industry investing in what will happen once it's built. But to be fair, that hasn't ramped up. This is 5 years away. That will happen soon once the procurement opportunities for inside corridor construction finish. They will move to a bigger market opportunity space, and that's when you'll hear a lot more from ARTC and federal government around what will happen and what industry will piggyback on the back of this. That's a $10 billion project. $5 billion of that sits within Toowoomba Regional Council catchment area. Okay, and that's the 6 kilometre tunnel that comes along and goes similar to where the second range crossing alignment is. So Toowoomba will get massive local content opportunities out of this that will grow. It is also a dual gauge system. So it will, trains coming in on the narrow gauge system from the west will be able to use this new alignment and go straight through to Brisbane and then continue past Acacia Ridge to the port on the narrow gauge. Standard gauge from the south, we'll be able to move it to Acacia Ridge, and then there's a big issue that this is a little bit like the fibre. Federal government don't like finishing things. It's not going to Melbourne Port and it's not going to Brisbane Port. It stops about 6 k's from both of them. Why is anyone's guess. Brisbane Port are not happy about it, but that's going to be the big change, or the big challenge now is advocating for that movement to Brisbane Port and allowing grain from northern New South Wales to come up and go out through Brisbane Port, but also allow food products and that to come up through to Toowoomba to work. Some people don't really understand the true nature of why that started. Brisbane Port is the only port in Australia that is able to take more than 8,000 20-foot container units in the future. So you can't go underneath Westgate Bridge in Melbourne any bigger than that, and Sydney has significant congestion issues and water issues as well. Brisbane Port, as ships get larger, will become the major port within Australia, and this is how Melbourne and Sydney and other inland areas will get cargo. It will land in Brisbane and be taken down there on double-decker trains. That is a key reason for the inland rail existing, because it's actually cheaper than fixing the port infrastructure in other areas. So that is a massive boom for us. We just need to connect it to Brisbane Port. Seems pretty obvious to me, but interesting, the corridor already exists. So the corridor from Acacia Ridge to the port exists. Somebody just needs to convince the voters either side of that we are finally going to build the train line that we built the corridor for. Intensive agriculture. I've got pictures of dairy cows there, mainly because we want them back. We're down to less than 1,000 milkers in southern Queensland now. There has been rumours of another one shutting its doors in the last month or two, but we're meeting with Dawalla on Monday to move some intensive, for them to grow their intensive poultry industry out into this region. We saw a real stop, if you've noticed, a real stop in poultry into this in the last 4 or 5 years, due to latent supply becoming available in the bankruptcy of one company in Brisbane that put a whole lot of capacity into that industry, in particular around Mount Cotton. That's now full again, so we'll see poultry coming back into our region. And obviously feedlotting, we're seeing Grassdale expand heavily, NH Foods in terms of meat processing expand heavily. So expect to see poultry and beef grow heavily, and pork we'll see, but commodity prices will need to change for that to see a massive growth in that area. But glasshouses, this is the biggest game changer that I see. To put this into perspective, the biggest glasshouse facility in Australia at present is at Guyra, and it's 50 hectares. The most famous, Sundrop, is only a 20 hectare site. There are currently DAs being submitted with council to a total of 170 hectares of protected horticulture glasshouses within this region. That is huge. So we're doing tours with businesses in towns to look at what that means. How do they innovate? How do they grow? What research and development do they do to supply into this sector? Interestingly, it won't oversupply, or our view is, it won't oversupply the domestic market. The people who are looking to build this are coming out of Northern Europe, where they have operations, and due to lack of land supply there and population growth, they no longer have the ability to meet EU and Northern African demands out of those facilities. So their offtake arrangements that are sitting in Asia at the moment will need to be met by somewhere else. They'll stop exporting from Europe to Asia and keep it domestically, and then build new production facilities here for the offtake arrangements into Asia. That's the whole reason for this facility existing. Why Toowoomba? We're close to an airport, so that was a massive reason for that. And two, while we hate the weather here, they love it. So we have an average temperature range per day during the year of only about 13.5 degrees. The Lockyer Valley sits at around 21 degrees per day. So that, in terms of power cost for these facilities, is a massive win. So expect to see a huge amount of that. Witmack Precinct are driving a lot of that because of the waste streams and energy that they can put into them. But that will be the big boom for this region coming forward. I'm really excited. There's a massive world shortage of hops at the moment. So beer guys are really struggling. Hops grow really well in these facilities. So we're looking at hops and then freeze drying them with some of the innovation we had at our 400M conference last week and taking them around the world. So food processing, so Botanica is a prime example of this coming into town, but this is where we see the growth in Toowoomba, or where we want to see the growth in Toowoomba. We are traditionally a bulk commodity export region. We sell grain really well, and we sell frozen beef really well, and any bulk commodity that goes out in big units. We want to hold that here, value add it, and then take it out. A couple of things that need to change for that. One is we need better connectivity and more flights to make perishable foods go out. So we need some people to loss lead in that. And two, workforce. We need skills development in processing to be able to make sure we've got the workforce to grow into that. So we're working with people like the Queensland Agricultural Training College, TAFE and others to ensure the programs are fluid enough for the right tech to come in. So what must we do? That's really small. We must continue to advocate for infrastructure. Everywhere I speak outside this region, people hate me saying that because you've got 11 billion, what more do you need? We need the connectivity. just because we've got the road, just because we've got the rail, who's actually bringing that together? So who's doing the photosanitary requirements for export, the methyl bromide facilities that you need for export to go out of an airport? That's what we need. We need, they're spending 11 billion, we need probably another 100 million spent on top of it, just on those facilities, just to finish the supply chain. So we must continue to advocate for those small spends on the end. Collaboration between sectors is going to be a big one, particularly as we go to value adding. So adding protein to our vegetables to make ready meal solutions to go out. That's where we need to drive consistency in what we do and collaboration between sectors. And that's the clusters of like-minded businesses, bringing them together to value add their products together. So from the farm gate right through the supply chain, we have more money going through. The big one there is continue to innovate. So you'll see more about us in this in January, but Food Leaders Australia through Toowoomba Basin Enterprise runs the Advancing Regional Innovations Program. It's a $1 million program to drive innovation adoption within the region and drive entrepreneurship within the region. We will be coming to the communities asking for you to come to us with ideas on how you want to spend that. We'll be matching any idea you've got dollar for dollar, or running it fully ourselves. So if you've got ideas that you want within your communities, we'd love to hear from you and build them out. So we've been doing a lot of work. We've put Steve Baxter out. We've been doing a lot of work getting excitement over this for the last 12 months. Now we want the community to come to us and tell us what they want, and then we'll fund those programs out of that. So if you've got anything, please come to us. And lastly, we have to protect the clean green image. I have someone who looks exactly like me, who's the global head of the World Wildlife Fund, my twin brother. He travelled the world, and there is significant danger of us losing that. Not so much losing our clean green image, but relative terms. So relative terms, losing that to Ireland, to the EU, to New Zealand, even to people like China and South America who are picking up. We're not seeing globally to be progressing our clean green image, we're just holding still. Others are coming in on top of us. So in relative terms, we're going backwards. We need to work and innovate ways to do that and have external bodies stand up for us and at tables and advocate for our position. So that is what scene setting is. That is our region. Done.